Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Cleaning Lady, Season 3, Episode 5. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we are starting off with, obviously, Tony and Luca have their interview with Susan today, and obviously it's pretty big, and just like everything that's kind of going on, you're just like, all right, well, Tony's here. Doesn't seem like there's going to be anything work related that comes up, which it does, but that immediately got dealt with because it turns out that Jorge went to find the guy that had something to do with Armand's kidnapping, and him and Dante grabbed the dude. But the problem is the guy's dead, and Tony was there. I mean, she is a medical expert, but they didn't really have her examine the dude. It was more so like a now we need you to come clean up this crime scene type of situation. But it's like, the fact is Dante's the one that went a little further, being like, oh, yo, he thought he could handle more. Because Ramona has beef with them going about this way because, like, hey, you doing what you're doing could compromise us getting Armand back. Because she has her own way of going about it. Jorge followed the lead, but he didn't check in with Ramona about it. So, once again, they've already had their division. Like, Tony's just in a weird and funny way. It's like Tony has a way of dividing people. Just like Armand and Nadia, and now Ramona and Jorge. Obviously different dynamics, but similar in result, because Jorge's only following this, like, you know, I mean, to be fair, Tony once again has a closer relationship to Ramona, to Jorge than she does Ramona. And very similar, like, oh, Tony had a much closer relationship with Armand than she did Nadia. So it's just interesting parallels kind of being set up here. Which, once again, the last episode makes it even more impactful that Nadia and Ramona are on, like, the same team in a lot of ways. Because Ramona's plan is to hurry up and get the insurance policy from Nadia's club so they can pay the ransom. But Jorge's like, we don't need to pay the ransom. You know, you don't negotiate with terrorist type of situation because that's just going to make us weak. They think, like, oh, we could do this. We could just keep pushing it and pushing it. Who's to say, like, oh, you're willing, you got that 100 mil real quick. How about we you know, boost that up a little bit, make it 120 mil. You know, it's that type of situation of, like, yeah, it makes us look weak, meaning they feel like they have the need to. I mean, they will now also know that Armand is someone that's, it's like, oh, you're willing to go this far for Armand. Who is he to you? They might not know the family connection in that capacity, but know that he's important to you. So a lot of Jorge's concerns from a criminal side of things, I'm like, I understand. But I also understand from Ramona's perspective. She brought up some interesting, too, because her and Jorge had this whole back and forth. Because even he's like, why are you going so far and above for, like, Armand? Like, why do you want him back? And it's like, he's like, is it just because, like, obviously it's like our way back to our family that we were kind of cast aside from? Is that what this is about? But Ramona's like, no, she wants Jorge and Armand to work together when she's gone. And it's like, whoa. I'm like, whoa, are you sick or something? Like, why are you even throwing that out there? But I guess as the like, jefe of this cartel, it's like, yeah, there's a good chance I could get popped off at any point in time, but I need this to be a family-led thing. So it's like, the moment Armand is back, you will realize, like, oh, you'll go back to the way you were. Like, you'll realize you're so good together. But I'm like, the fact is Ramona is so holding on to something from years ago, because, like, to the point that Jorge on repeated occasions has been like, yeah, sure, we were young. I don't see what that has to deal with us as our business now. Like, for him, it doesn't compute of, like, why is that so important? Why is he so important to you? I have my own theories. As I brought up before, I believe just every episode, my suspicions will probably end up being wrong, but every episode that passes, I'm just like, I feel more and more that Ramona might have something to do with this. That, like, even Jorge says it later on, and I think it's an important line to keep in mind. It's like, you do love to play games, and it's like she might have her own ulterior motives for doing this. Like, I'll go ahead and express my theory right now since I'm on this topic. I'm wondering, did she kidnap Armand for the purposes of making him indebted to her? Like, could it be a twisted game of like, oh yeah, I love you, I found out about you, so I'm going to use this kidnapping as, I'm going to be your savior, you're going to kind of be indebted to me, and we could be family again, but maybe things spiraled out further than she thought they were. Like, that's, once again, that's my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory currently. Like I said, it might end up being like Ramona has nothing to do with this. Once again, it might end up being like, oh, because like I said, I'm going back and forth between it being Jorge or her, but it's like maybe I'm drifting further and further from Jorge, but it might just be like, no, Jorge is behind this. So it could be something like that, like he might be once again making his own power play type of situation. So I could be wrong in that capacity. I'm like, no, it is Jorge, or it just could be neither one of them. I could be completely wrong. So we'll have to wait and see on that front. But like, I know it, like I said, it seems weird, but it feels like that could be her motivation, especially because of that line of she loves to play games, at least from Jorge's perspective. So I don't know. That's currently where I'm standing with a possible motive. You know, not less she, because it's like they've dealt with Tony and Armand before, but it's like, right, I didn't know that was you until now I found out, oh, the person that's missing is Armand. So it's like, maybe she did eventually find out, and that's why she set this all in motion. That's why you have like a third party person kidnap him. That's what makes the Dante thing even more suspicious, that it's like, oh yeah, Dante, like, oh, he thought this guy could handle more, the guy wouldn't talk. I'm like, it almost felt like they were almost covering their tracks to some extent. Once again, part of my tinfoil hat conspiracy, but it felt like that could have just been you tying up a loose end type of situation, but I don't know. Now, like I said, that could be complete and utter bullshit on my part, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But aside from all of that, like I said, Tony showed up. It's like, wait, this guy was supposed to be a means of finding Armand, but like, once again, Ramona's putting her foot down. I'm going to be the one to find Armand. Like, here you are questioning me. And it's like, well, fine. Like, and it's like, you do what you're supposed to do, Tony. Clean up. But Tony's like, I had nothing to do with this. And like, I've got to go back to my child because she's got her interview with Susan. But sadly, by the time she gets back, Luca's gone, and I was like, oh god. I was like, would Ramona really go this far to kidnap? Like, just regardless of how she feels about Tony, I'm like, would she have been able to do that so quickly without anyone noticing? I had a feeling more like it probably was Luca running away, because Tony was like, no, he would never do that. It's like, yeah, but these are very extenuating circumstances. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't, but under the circumstances of he literally just had a nightmare about Susan taking him away from his mom, so it's like, understandable. So I had a feeling like he probably will be taken. Like, I thought they'd find him pretty quickly and it'd be all kind of like, okay, over with, it wouldn't be an issue. But it's like, nah, more and more time passes. The entire family splits up to look for him, and it's just like, the more time is going by, the more things get worse, because Susan shows up and Tony's trying to buy more time, and JD and Fee come back, and it's like, oh, we don't have Luca. We left him at the arcade with my other kids. And it's like, Susan's like, no, you need to tell us. And JD trying to do what he thought was right. It's like, all right, like, he knows that Tony is mixed up with some very bad people, because he saw Dante pick her up earlier in the episode. And so it's like, right, he gave the description and stuff like that. It's like, right, you're in bed with some bad people, so there is a possibility they could have taken Luca. And it's like, JD shouldn't have done that. He should have trusted Tony, but understandably, him and Tony aren't in a very trusting place with each other, because it's like, yeah, they're family, but it's also like JD lost Fee because of that. So it's like a lot of stuff happened because of Tony. So he's not trying to take any chances with his family. In fact, he's kind of beating himself up, saying like, right, if I had handled things in the past, if I had stepped up in the past, maybe we wouldn't even be where we are right now. It's like, Fee tries to cut him some slack, being like, no, you were young when you had, when I got pregnant with Jazz. But it's like, it doesn't, for him, it's like, it doesn't change anything. It's like, I should have stepped up. You wouldn't be in the complicated circumstances you are right now if I just kind of, stepped up. And it's like, right, I want you to move in, which Fee is like, it's very complicated because this is her home, being with Tony, and I think making that move to move in with JD is kind of scary, because it's like, I mean, especially because this is fresh off of everything where it's like, oh, I thought I was gonna die, I thought my son was gonna die. It's just, once again, it's just, she's always done a lot for her son, but this is like the most she's probably ever, like the most dire situation she's ever been in when it comes to Chris. And so like once again, it's like I finally understand like the desperation to do anything for your child. Like she always understood it, but it's like it's a different thing when you're able to be, it's that sympathy versus empathy type of situation. Imagining yourself in Sean's shoes versus actually being able to walk in their shoes. And so V's kind of got a different perspective on that post, all of that stuff. So all of that's also kind of created some interesting dilemma with Jazz and Chris. I kind of had a feeling like she had a very like there was like a sly remark she had. I forgot what the exact remark was, but it's because Chris was making a point like because he's making a meal. It's like, oh yeah, here's a picture of me and my dad. It's like, oh, I hope you get to see him again. He's like, yeah, you'll be able to go see him because obviously you can come and go in this country whenever you want to because she is a natural born citizen where he doesn't have that situation. But then she's like, yeah, like she made some remark about like, yeah, you'll kind of sneak off again or something like that. Chris didn't really catch it, but I immediately was like, ooh, she's pissed. Understandably so. Her only brother like bailed on her. It's like you going to like go after mom in Manila, like that's one thing, but you didn't even tell me like what if I lost you and mom? Like didn't I like it would have sucked already losing mom. Now I lost my own brother too. At least she still would have JD, but still it's like this is my family, So it all kind of comes to a head later on when they split up. Even though she didn't want to split up to go look for Luca, and it's like, yeah, like here you are again, like, oh, you want to look after me now? It's like, no, I didn't want to split up, and just like you went off to Manila after mom, it's like you didn't talk to me at all. Like, what if something had happened? And he's like, I did what I had to do, but at the same time, I recognize I should have talked to you. I'm sorry. So I thought, granted, it's not as like long stretching, but it's like understandable where Jazz is coming from of like, yeah, you did something without even talking to me, because he's like, and I figured his reason would be what it is. It's like, yeah, you would try and stop me from doing it. Chris would have done it regardless of what Jazz wanted, but he wanted to avoid all of that because it's like you would have probably said something to JD. I wouldn't have been able to go. So, but it's like, yeah, that could have all gone extremely sideways and she would have lost you both, and came very close to it last episode as well. So, but because this whole situation is blown up into what it is, it goes beyond just, like I said, the family looking for Luca. Now an Amber Alert's been administered, and now they've got Dante's description in his car, so he ends up getting grabbed, which I think is so interesting because it later on they check, they're like, why did Dante get arrested? Because it doesn't make any sense considering like the Amber Alert, like for first and foremost, Tony was more focused on Luca because she ends up telling Fee about who she's kidding. It's like, wait, I thought the people you're working with are Armand's family. It's like, yeah, but they're part of our cartel. And it's like, yeah, but it is what it is. I mean, also Fee's not trying to fight her too much because it's like, well, that cartel's also the reason why me and Chris came back to the U.S. So it's like, yeah, I mean, Tony's already been mixed into the bad people before. Like I said, again, it is a situation of, yeah, but I'm a lot more understanding of your desperation to do whatever it takes, especially when it comes to finding Armand, who is the person who has gone above and beyond for you and Lucas. So, but then there's also the situation of, yeah, maybe these people did have something to do with Luca's disappearance, and maybe it's a good thing that we've got an Amber Alert out and this stuff, because we never actually found out why they actually arrested Dante, what he had. Maybe he had like drugs, or maybe a unlicensed gun or something on him for them to, because we never found out what it was, because it's like, well, Luca wasn't in the car, so it's like that should have been fine, but they arrested him regardless. So, and later on, Tony's not able to find out what the exact reason was that they were holding Dante, why they arrested him, but it seemed like they found something in the car when they had the legal right to do it because of the Amber Alert. So that ended up being interesting. But interestingly enough, they end up finding Luca later on at kind of like an aquarium. Understand, like it wasn't until they got there that I was like, right, the turtles, because he talked about he wished he was a turtle, he could be in the show. I mean, obviously he loves turtles as well in general. So I was like, man, and luckily they found him and he's okay. He's just staring at the turtles because apparently Chris, like one time they were there, taught him how to kind of just sneak in. So that's what he did. And it's an unfortunate situation because you're just like you as an audience member, you're also like you have conflicted feelings because you're like, oh, you're so frustrated because you're like, right, this kid did this, and now like Luca's decision has caused such a massive ripple effect. He caused a lot of issues, but at the same time, he's a little kid. He doesn't understand. He doesn't know all that's going on. All he is a scared kid of like, hey, if I hide away, the woman that's trying to take me from my mom won't be able to take me from my mom. Like, once again, he's not old enough to recognize me doing that is actually going to cause more issues for my mom. In fact, I'm more likely to get it taken away now because, yeah, this was my decision, but, you know, and that should be considered, but it's still like, once again, he's a kid who doesn't understand the ramifications of his actions. So that's where you're kind of like, yeah, he's just a kid doing something. He's scared. And also, like, it causes issues on the cartel front because Jorge did confront Ramona about it because he was kind of like, no, Ramona wouldn't do that. But he even confronted her being like, she's like, you think I'd do it? He's like, you like to play games. It's like, the fact is that even Jorge kind of had to, he tried to make it seem like he did entertain the idea, but he confronted her because he knows there's a strong possibility that she could have done that. Because I'm like, what has she done in the past that makes you think she would, like, there has to be precedent for him to believe that she would do something like that just because she is petty and like, oh, I'm angry at you. Plus, she's kind of threatened inadvertently. She never outwardly threatened Luca, but it is a situation of you were able to just kind of sneak into Tony's place and just kind of be around her kid, which is like super not cool. That was kind of a message in itself. Plus, like, Tony was right. It's like, right, she promised to leave me alone. Like, my Luca was never like, you know, that's a technicality around that. I mean, I guess I could also make the argument like the rest of her family's not safe either. Like, Tony, like, no, nothing would ever happen to Tony, but the rest of the people around you, now that's not guaranteed. So, but yeah, the Amber Alert and Dante getting arrested has massive ramifications because it turns out he was the point of contact with Armand's kidnappers, and because Dante wasn't there to kind of be able to set up everything, despite them getting the money from the payout and stuff from the insurance, they, you know, it screwed everything up. The fact is that Dante is the point just seems weird to me. Once again, it's just like certain things just ain't lining up, and it just seems too suspicious. It just feels like, once again, that it is part of Ramona's game. Like, I can't let that go. It just feels too suspicious. But Tony had made a suggestion to Jorge, being the lawyer that he is, which it comes in handy in this situation. It's like, right, if you can get the Amber Alert like thrown out, kind of make it so that from an official standpoint, it never happened, it actually gets rid of, because it's like, right, the Amber Alert should have never been called in the first place. So like, if you could make it so that that never happened, it works out for Tony because Susan was going to use this against Tony, sadly. It's like, right, you didn't know where your child was for several hours. And it's like, especially because it's like, yeah, my son ran away because of you and the circumstances. It's like, yeah, but you should have kept a better eye on him. It's like, he was in a house full of people, and that's sadly all going to get used against Tony. So that's why she went to Jorge about it. You get rid of the Amber Alert, that gets rid of, like, it kind of makes whatever they found against whatever they found against Dante, it makes it kind of fruit from the poisonous tree of, like, if without the Amber Alert was the excuse you had, and now it makes whatever, if the Amber Alert never technically happened, anything you found because of the Amber Alert it can't be used in court. So and luckily Jorge came through, and it all worked out. But obviously, like, you know, it came down to the wire because Tony, you know, had, you know, obviously Fee, Jazz, and Chris being, you know, character witnesses to her as a mother in front of everyone. Even Susan, you know, was kind of like, right, what I've seen, she is a mother who cares, but the problem is the medication was kind of like, it falls into the abuse category of like giving your son medicine that wasn't like wasn't approved here in the, you know, I'm about to say like FDA, because it's like, because the FDA is specifically here, right? Or is that like, no, I'm thinking of that's FDA's like, what, does FDA cover medicine too, or is that just food? It's a different organization that covers medicine and stuff, right? God, I'm such an idiot. I'm sorry. Either way, like, it's not approved here in the U.S., but it is in the Philippines. That's why Tony was so okay with giving that to Luca, and that's what the point she was making of, like, yes, am I sorry for what I did know from the purposes of my son was sick, and just to be able to hold my son one more time, to like wish him like to do all those things. Like a parent will do whatever it takes for their child. And so I gave my child a drug that I believed was safe because it was approved in the Philippines as well, so like don't punish my son for the mistakes I've made, So all of that, along with the Amber Alert being stricken, it technically not happening on the official record, so that can't be used against Tony anymore. It all works in Tony's favor, and because of all of that, even Susan co-signed, like, right, understanding Tony's care and love for her son, her desperation to do whatever it takes for her son. Because of that, the court sees in favor of Tony, but she will still have to get CPS visits from Susan. And so if Tony messes up even in the slightest bit going forward, it's going to end with Luca still being taken from him. But that's kind of tomorrow's problem. Right now, she gets to take Luca home and be with him, so it all works out. I am curious, the aftermath of this, specifically JD, especially the question he brought up to Fee, and this puts stuff in the, I'm curious to see where all this ends up heading. But despite everything, Ramona is pissed at Tony. It's like, right, I don't know what kind of hold this woman has on you, but she better stay out of our business. Anything related to getting Armand back, because she almost ruined it. In fact, she did ruin it, so I'm not going to take any chances of her ruining it in the future. So Jorge lets her know, like, right, you have to stay away from this whole Armand business. If you don't, Ramona, there could be issues. Ramona didn't take your son this time, but doesn't mean she won't next time. So Tony wants to look after Armand, but it is the thing of, fine, I have to leave it to them, but she also doesn't trust them enough to handle this, so she probably still will kind of, because I don't think she knows that, she still doesn't know that Nadia and Ramona are working together when it comes to this whole Armand situation. So maybe she'll still go to Nadia being like, right, we have to still look for him, but Nadia's not going to work with her because she doesn't trust her. But also it's like, I'm working with Ramona, so it's like, right. I mean, it's also a good thing for Tony. It's like, right, as long as I'm able to kind of take a step back. I mean, to be fair, like, they're still going to call her in for stuff, but it's like, which is, she's never going to be far away from the cartel situation, so they'll probably still bring her in for work, but it's still the thing of, like, everything related to Armand, stay out of our way type of thing. Because at the very least, you're, like, hoping that, well, she's going to be worried about Armand, but at least this gives her time just to focus on Luca, especially because Susan can pop up at any point in time and cause some issues, so once again, it's that situation of, because it's Tony, you're sympathetic, being like, okay, like, don't take, but it's also like, if this were any other circumstances, if we weren't associated with Tony like the way we are, if we didn't know her story, then you'd be like, no, Susan's just doing her job, trying to do what's best for the child. Like, it's not anything against Susan and her profession, because it's about doing what's best for the child. Excuse me. And if it wasn't for Tony's circumstances of us following her as the protagonist of the story, you wouldn't, I mean, you probably feel some sympathy, but like, you probably wouldn't fully know the ins and outs of her circumstances, her desperation, to feel sympathetic towards her. So, like I said, some very, very interesting developments. I'm curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Also, whether or not any of my theories I've kind of thrown out there hold any weight or water, so we'll wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.